Imagine this. There's a designer. Let's call her Mia. For years, she worked tirelessly, pouring her heart into her craft. But her work was only seen by a handful of people. Mostly colleagues and a few clients. She wasn't getting the recognition she deserved. And honestly, she was starting to wonder if her work even mattered. One day, on a whim, Mia decided to post a few sketches on Instagram. Not polished, finished pieces, just raw, behind-the-scenes glimpses of her process. First, nothing happened. But then, a few comments trickled in. People loved seeing how the magic happened. They shared her posts, tagged their friends, and within a few months, Mia's audience had exploded. Fast forward to today. She's collaborating with global brands, landing projects she once only dreamed of, all because she started showing her work. Now, let me ask you this. What's the point of creating something amazing if no one ever sees it? What if your best ideas, the ones that could inspire, connect, or even change someone's life, are sitting in a folder unseen? That's the scary part, isn't it? The thought that you could be holding yourself back. Not because your work isn't good enough, but because you're not sharing it. And here's the kicker. In a world where everyone is online, visibility is no longer optional. It's the difference between staying invisible and unlocking opportunities you didn't even know existed. This brings me to Show Your Work by Kleon. If you've ever felt stuck, wondering how to get your work noticed without feeling like a sleazy self-promoter, this book is a game changer. Kleon breaks it all down into simple, actionable steps. It's not about bragging or putting on a show. It's about sharing your journey, connecting with others, and letting the process speak for itself. Whether you're an artist, a coder, a teacher, or anything in between, the principles in this book can transform how you approach your work and your audience. Think about this. What if showing just one small part of your process could spark a chain reaction of opportunities? What if the only thing standing between you and your big break is the decision to put yourself out there? That's exactly what we're diving into. By the end of this, you'll not only understand why sharing your work is so powerful, but also how to do it in a way that feels authentic and exciting. So let's get into it, because your work deserves to be seen and the world is waiting. Chapter 1. The Power of Sharing. Why Show Your Work matters. There's something magical about the way the world has changed in just a few decades. Think about it. Not too long ago, if you wanted to get noticed for your work, whether it was painting, photography, or even designing software, you had to rely on someone else to open the doors for you. Gatekeepers, they called them. Publishers, gallery owners, talent scouts. If they didn't approve, your work stayed hidden. But today, we live in a completely different reality. The internet has shattered those barriers. You don't need permission to showcase your talent anymore. You just need an internet connection and the willingness to hit post. Take the story of Sam, a self-taught photographer from a small town. Sam didn't have access to high-profile art galleries or elite photography circles. But what he did have was a smartphone and a love for capturing the everyday beauty of his surroundings. Rusty train tracks, golden fields at sunset, the kind of scenes most people walk past without a second glance. He started sharing his photos on Instagram, adding little captions about what inspired each shot. Slowly, people started noticing. First, it was friends and family, then strangers. Then, one day, a major travel brand reached out and asked if he'd like to collaborate. Now, Sam's work is featured in ad campaigns and magazines worldwide. All because he decided to share his perspective. This is the cultural shift we're living through. It's no longer about waiting for someone to validate your work. It's about showing up, sharing it, and letting the world decide. And here's the beautiful part. The world loves seeing work in progress. People crave authenticity and connection. They don't just want the polished masterpiece. They want to know how it came to life. This brings us to something deeply human. Sharing your work isn't just about exposure or fame. It's about connection. Think about the last time you scrolled through social media and stumbled across someone's behind-the-scenes video or heartfelt post about a challenge they overcame. Didn't it make you feel something? Maybe inspired, maybe comforted, maybe even a little bit in awe. That's the power of storytelling. When you share not just what you've created but the journey it took to get there, the late nights, the mistakes, the moments of doubt, you invite people into your world. You make them care. One of the most striking examples of this is the rise of independent creators who share their process openly. Like Maria, a baker who started a YouTube channel showing her experiments with sourdough. She didn't start as an expert. She was learning as she went. But by documenting her successes and failures, burnt loaves, dough that refused to rise, she built a loyal audience. People loved her honesty, her humor, and the way she made baking feel accessible. Now, she has her own bakery and a community of fans who feel like they were part of her journey. But let's be real, sharing isn't always easy. The number one reason people hesitate is fear. Fear of being judged, criticized, or worse, ignored. You might be thinking, what if people don't like what I share? What if they say I'm not good enough? These fears are valid, but they're also conquerable. Every creator who has ever shared their work has felt them. What sets them apart is that they did it anyway. Here's a trick to help. Instead of thinking about sharing as an act of self-promotion, think of it as an act of generosity. You're not shouting, "Look at me!" You're saying, "Here's something I made. Maybe it'll resonate with you." When you frame it this way, sharing becomes less about ego and more about contribution. A good example is Jake, a graphic designer who used to obsess over whether his work was perfect before showing it. One day, he decided to post a time-lapse video of a project he was still figuring out. To his surprise, people loved it. Not because it was flawless, but because it was real. They appreciated seeing the process, the little tweaks, the moments of indecision. It reminded them that creativity is messy, and that's okay. If you're still on the fence about sharing, think about this. What's the worst that could happen? Maybe someone leaves a negative comment. Maybe a post doesn't get as many likes as you hoped. But what's the best that could happen? Maybe your work reaches someone who truly needs it. Maybe it sparks a collaboration or inspires someone to start their own journey. The potential rewards far outweigh the risks. And here's the thing, when you start sharing, you're not just putting your work out there. You're also building a habit of showing up. Each post, each story, each behind-the-scenes glimpse is a step toward something bigger. You're creating a body of work that not only represents you but also connects you to others in ways you can't predict. So, here's the takeaway. Sharing your work isn't just a strategy. It's a mindset. It's about embracing the idea that your work has value and that there's someone out there who needs to see it. Whether it's one person or 1 million, the act of sharing can create ripples you can't even imagine. And as you'll see, this is just the beginning. The real magic happens when you start thinking not just about what you're sharing, but how you're sharing it. How do you tell your story? How do you invite people into your process? These are the questions we'll explore next, so stick around because your work is worth it and the world is waiting to see it. Chapter 2, Think Process, Not Product, the Art of Sharing the Journey. Picture this. You walk into a bakery, and instead of just seeing rows of perfectly baked bread, you get to step behind the counter. You see the dough being kneaded, the flour dusting the air, and the baker carefully scoring the loaves before they go into the oven. Suddenly, the bread isn't just bread anymore. It's a story, a process, an experience. This is the power of sharing the how behind what you do, and it's something audiences are craving more than ever. The internet has made it possible to peek behind the curtain in ways we couldn't before. People are fascinated by the journey of creation, the trial and error, the small wins, the unexpected obstacles. This is why maker YouTube channels are thriving. Whether it's a woodworker crafting a custom table or a painter working on a mural, there's something captivating about watching a project come to life from start to finish. It's not just the final product that matters. It's the process that draws people in and keeps them invested. Think about the rise of behind-the-scenes documentaries. Why do we love them so much? Because they reveal the hidden layers of creativity. Take a movie, for example. We don't just want to see the polished final cut. We want to know how the director made decisions, how the actors prepared for their roles, and even how the crew pulled off that one impossible shot. It makes us feel connected to the art in a deeper way, like we're part of the journey. Now, imagine applying that same principle to your work. Whether you're an artist, a writer, a coder, or a chef, showing your process isn't just about transparency, it's about creating a connection. People love seeing the messy middle, the parts where things aren't perfect yet. It reminds them that creativity is a human endeavor, full of challenges and breakthroughs. But how do you actually document your process in a way that feels natural and engaging? Start by thinking small. You don't need to create a full-blown documentary or spend hours editing videos. Sometimes, the simplest moments can have the biggest impact. For example, you could snap a quick photo of your sketchbook, record a short clip of you testing out a new idea, or write a brief post about a challenge you faced and how you solved it. The key is to make it easy for yourself. You're not trying to create another masterpiece. You're just letting people peek behind the curtain. One of the best ways to do this is by using tools you already have. Your phone's camera, a basic blog platform, or even social media can be powerful tools for capturing and sharing your process. The goal isn't perfection, it's authenticity. Take Anna, a textile artist who started sharing snippets of her work on TikTok. At first, she felt awkward posting videos of her stitching patterns or dyeing fabric. But to her surprise, those simple clips resonated with people. They loved seeing the tiny details of her craft, the way she mixed colors or added intricate stitches by hand. Her audience grew not because her work was flawless, but because it was real. Once you start documenting your process, think about how to tell your story in a way that keeps people engaged. Every good story has 3 key elements: conflict, progression, and resolution. Let's break that down. Conflict is the challenge or problem you're trying to solve. It could be as big as figuring out how to launch a new product or as small as deciding which color palette to use. Progression is the journey you take to address that challenge, the steps you try, the ideas that work, and the ones that don't. And resolution is the moment of clarity or success when everything comes together. For example, if you're a graphic designer, your conflict might be a tricky client brief. Your progression could include sketches, revisions, and brainstorming sessions. And your resolution might be the final design and the client's reaction. By framing your process as a story, you give your audience a narrative to follow, something that keeps them invested from start to finish. One creator who does this brilliantly is John, a carpenter who shares time-lapse videos of his projects on YouTube. In one video, he documented the process of building a custom bookshelf. The conflict: the client wanted a design that fit an oddly shaped wall. The progression: John showed every step, from measuring the space to cutting and assembling the wood. He even included the moments when things didn't go as planned, like when one of the shelves didn't fit and had to be redone. The resolution: a beautifully crafted bookshelf and a happy client. That video alone has millions of views because it's not just about the finished product. It's about the story behind it. And let's not forget the emotional side of storytelling. When you share your process, you're not just showing what you do, you're sharing a piece of yourself. You're letting people see your passion, your dedication, and even your vulnerabilities. That kind of authenticity is what builds trust and loyalty. It's what makes people root for you and want to see you succeed. Of course, there's a balance to strike. You don't need to share every single detail of your work. The goal is to give people just enough to feel connected without overwhelming them. Think of it like giving them a highlight reel instead of a play-by-play. And here's a pro tip: don't be afraid to share your failures. In fact, those moments can be some of the most powerful parts of your story. They show that you're human, that you're learning and growing just like everyone else. Plus, they make your successes feel even more earned. At the end of the day, sharing your process isn't just about attracting an audience, it's about creating a dialogue. It's about inviting people into your world and giving them a reason to care. And when you do that, you're not just showing your work, you're building a community around it. So, as you move forward, ask yourself, what part of my process could I share today? It doesn't have to be big or elaborate, just something that gives people a glimpse into your world. Because when you show your work, you're not just sharing what you create, you're sharing who you are. And that's what people connect with the most. Chapter 3. Teach what you know. Building authority through generosity. Imagine you're sitting in a cafe, watching someone sketch on a napkin. They're not just drawing. They're explaining each stroke, sharing why they chose that particular line, how they're balancing the composition, and what mistakes to avoid. Even if you've never picked up a pencil in your life, you feel like you're learning something. That's the magic of teaching. It transforms something personal into something universal, a bridge that connects your knowledge to others' curiosity. Teaching isn't just about standing at the front of a classroom or publishing textbooks. It's about sharing what you know in a way that helps others. And here's the beauty of it. Teaching doesn't diminish your expertise. It amplifies it. When you teach, you're not just helping someone else grow. You're solidifying your own understanding. You're showing the world that you know your stuff, and you're generous enough to share it. Think about it this way. When you teach, you're not just offering information. You're building authority. Authority isn't about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the one people trust. And trust is built through generosity, through giving before you ask for anything in return. Take the story of Liam, a software developer with a knack for solving tricky coding problems. He noticed that while there were plenty of tutorials for beginners, there wasn't much content for intermediate coders looking to tackle niche challenges. So, Liam started creating short videos explaining how to optimize complex algorithms or debug elusive errors. His approach was straightforward and approachable, breaking down dense topics into bite-sized lessons. At first, his audience was small, a handful of colleagues and friends. But as his videos began to circulate, more people discovered them. They appreciated not just the content, but the clarity and care Liam brought to each tutorial. Over time, his reputation grew. Companies started reaching out, asking him to consult on their projects or speak at conferences. Eventually, he landed a job at a top tech firm, all because he decided to share what he knew. Now, you might be thinking, what do I have to teach? I'm not an expert. But here's the thing, you don't have to know everything to teach something. You just need to know a little more than the person who's struggling with the problem you've already solved. In fact, teaching from the perspective of someone who's still learning can be incredibly powerful. It makes your lessons more relatable, more accessible. Start by reflecting on your unique experiences and strengths. What have you figured out that others might find challenging? Could be something technical like setting up a complex spreadsheet or something creative like finding your voice as a writer. It doesn't have to be grand or groundbreaking. It just has to be yours. For instance, Mia, a small business owner, started sharing tips on how she managed her finances. She wasn't a financial expert, but she had learned a few strategies that worked for her. By posting short, practical videos on social media, she not only helped other small business owners but also established herself as a go-to resource in her niche. Once you've identified what you can teach, think about how to present it in a way that resonates with your audience. Good teaching is good storytelling. It's about taking people on a journey, showing them where they are now, where they could be, and how to get there. Break down complex ideas into simple steps. Use metaphors, examples, and analogies to make your lesson stick. And don't be afraid to inject a bit of personality. Humor, vulnerability, or a unique perspective can make your teaching memorable. Teaching isn't just about sharing knowledge. It's about inspiring action. When you teach, you're not just giving people information. You're giving them the confidence to try something new, to take a step forward. That's a gift, and it's one that often comes back to you in unexpected ways. The act of teaching can open doors you didn't even know existed. It can lead to collaborations, opportunities, and relationships that enrich your life and work. But perhaps the greatest reward is the sense of purpose it brings. The feeling that your work is making a difference, that it matters. And here's the best part. The more you teach, the more you learn. Teaching forces you to clarify your thoughts, to dig deeper into your subject, to anticipate questions and challenges. It's a cycle of growth that benefits everyone involved. So start small. Share a tip, a tutorial, or a lesson you've learned. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be honest. Remember, teaching isn't about showing off. It's about lifting others up. And in doing so, you'll find that you lift yourself up too. As we've explored, sharing your work isn't just about getting noticed. It's about creating connections, building trust, and contributing something meaningful to the world. When you think of your work not just as something you do, but as something you can share, document, and teach, you open the door to endless possibilities. So what's the next step? It's simple. Take what you know and share it with someone who needs it. Because the world isn't just waiting to see your work. It's waiting to learn from it. Chapter 4. Embrace amateurism. Start small. Stay authentic. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast lake, watching a child pick up a stick and start drawing shapes in the sand. There's no concern about whether the shapes are perfect or if anyone else will like them. It's just about the joy of creating something new. That's the spirit of amateurism. Approaching your work with curiosity, enthusiasm, and a willingness to learn, rather than the pressure to be an expert. In a world that often glorifies mastery, it's easy to believe that you need to have all the answers before you can share your work. But the truth is, some of the most inspiring creations come from people who are still figuring things out. Amateurs have a unique advantage. They bring fresh eyes to their field, unburdened by the rigid expectations or conventions that can sometimes stifle professionals. Take Sarah, for example, a teacher who had no formal background in graphic design. Frustrated by the lack of engaging materials for her students, she began designing her own worksheets and posting them online. They were simple at first, basic layouts and illustrations, but her enthusiasm shone through. Other teachers took notice, and soon Sarah had a following of educators who appreciated her creative approach. She wasn't trying to be the best designer in the world. She was simply solving a problem and sharing what she made. That's the magic of starting small and staying authentic. When you're an amateur, you don't feel the need to pretend you have everything figured out. You can experiment, make mistakes, and grow in public. And in doing so, you invite others to join you on your journey. But here's the catch. Many people hesitate to share their work because they're afraid of judgment. What if it's not good enough? What if people criticize it? That fear of imperfection can be paralyzing, but it's also an illusion. No one expects your early work to be flawless. In fact, the imperfections are often what make it relatable and endearing. Think about the early videos of Casey Neistat, the filmmaker who became a YouTube sensation. His initial content wasn't polished. Some clips were shaky, others had rough cuts, but the raw authenticity of his storytelling captivated viewers. Over time, his skills improved, but even as his production quality increased, he held on to the amateur spirit that made his work so engaging. Avoiding perfectionism doesn't mean settling for mediocrity. It means recognizing that progress is more important than perfection. Every time you put something out into the world, you're taking a step forward. Each iteration teaches you something new, refines your craft, and brings you closer to where you want to be. There's a story about a pottery teacher who divided her class into two groups. One group was told they'd be graded on the quantity of pots they produced, while the other group would be graded on the quality of a single pot. At the end of the semester, it was the quantity group that ended up producing the best pots. Why? Because they weren't paralyzed by the pursuit of perfection. They kept experimenting, learning from each attempt, and improving along the way. This lesson applies to any creative endeavor. The more you create and share, the more you learn, and the more your audience grows. Each piece of work you share is like a breadcrumb, leading people to discover more about you and your journey. Now, you might wonder, what if my work is too simple or too basic? But that simplicity can be a strength. Sharing small, approachable pieces of work invites others to engage with it. It's like offering a warm invitation instead of an intimidating challenge. For example, Alex, a self-taught guitarist, began posting short videos of himself learning popular songs. He didn't present himself as an expert. He openly shared his mistakes and progress. His authenticity resonated with people who were also learning to play. They saw themselves in Alex, and his journey inspired them to keep going. Over time, Alex's following grew, and he even started collaborating with professional musicians. The amateur spirit isn't just about where you start. It's about how you approach your work at every stage. Even seasoned professionals can benefit from embracing a beginner's mindset, staying curious, taking risks, and remaining open to feedback. And remember, your audience doesn't expect perfection. They expect honesty. When you show your process, flaws and all, you're giving people permission to do the same. You're saying, it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay to start small. What matters is that you start. This openness creates a ripple effect. By sharing your journey, you're not just building your own path. You're paving the way for others to follow. You're creating a community of people who see value in progress, authenticity, and growth. As you embrace amateurism, keep this in mind. The most important thing isn't how good your work is today. It's that you're willing to share it, learn from it, and keep going. Each step you take adds to your story, and that story is what draws people in. So start where you are with what you have. Pick up the metaphorical stick, draw in the sand, and share it with the world. You don't need to be an expert to make an impact. You just need to show up, stay curious, and keep creating. Chapter 5. Find your scene, building a supportive network. Picture this. A musician sitting alone in their room, crafting melodies late into the night. Their passion is undeniable, but something is missing. Now imagine that same musician stepping into a room filled with other creators. People who share their love for sound, exchange ideas, and offer encouragement. Suddenly, the creative spark that once flickered in isolation becomes a roaring flame. That's the power of finding your scene. Community isn't just a nice-to-have for creative growth. It's essential. Creativity thrives on connection, on the give and take of ideas, the mutual support that fuels ambition, and the shared energy that makes the hard work feel a little lighter. The world is filled with stories of artists, writers, entrepreneurs, and innovators who reached their full potential only after they found their people. One such story is about Maria, a budding illustrator who felt stuck in her creative journey. She admired other artists online but struggled to gain traction for her work. One day, she joined a virtual art group, where members shared their daily sketches, gave feedback, and encouraged each other to experiment. Through this group, Maria connected with a more experienced illustrator who became her mentor. She also found collaborators who introduced her to new projects, ultimately leading to her first major commission. This kind of transformation isn't uncommon when you're part of a scene. Your scene is more than just a network. It's a source of inspiration, accountability, and belonging. It's where you can exchange ideas without fear of judgment, celebrate each other's wins, and navigate challenges together. But how do you find your scene? It starts with seeking out spaces where your interests align with those of others. Thanks to the internet, you can connect with like-minded people from anywhere in the world. Online forums, social media groups, Discord servers, and virtual meetups are treasure troves of creative communities. Take your time exploring these spaces. Engage authentically, participate in conversations, and share your work. Look for communities that foster inclusivity and respect. A true scene is built on mutual support, not competition. Offline, the opportunities are just as rich. Local workshops, meetups, and networking events offer a chance to connect face-to-face. Think about that open mic night where a poet meets a musician and sparks a collaboration, or a co-working space where a designer finds a coder to bring their app idea to life. Sometimes, finding your scene isn't about joining an existing group. It's about creating one. When Kleon, the author of Show Your Work, talks about finding your scenius, he's referring to the collective genius of a group that amplifies each individual's creativity. If you can't find a community that resonates with you, why not start one? Reach out to people who inspire you, host a virtual brainstorming session, or organize a local gathering. Remember, a great scene isn't necessarily large or flashy. It's about quality over quantity, the depth of the connections you make, not the number of them. Even a small, tight-knit group of supportive individuals can make a world of difference. A good example of the impact of a scene is the story of James, an indie filmmaker who was struggling to get his projects off the ground. By attending a small film festival in his city, he connected with a group of like-minded creators. They started meeting regularly to exchange ideas and critique each other's work. Through this group, James found a cinematographer for his next project, a composer for the soundtrack, and even a producer who helped him secure funding. That short film went on to win awards, opening doors James had only dreamed of before. Collaboration is one of the greatest gifts a scene can offer. When you work with others, you combine strengths, perspectives, and resources. It's not just about what you create together. It's about how the experience of collaboration deepens your skills and broadens your vision. Of course, being part of a scene isn't always smooth sailing. Creative communities, like any group of people, can have their challenges, conflicting opinions, differing goals, or even the occasional personality clash. But these hurdles are part of the process, teaching you how to navigate relationships, handle feedback, and stay true to your vision while working with others. The beauty of finding your scene is that it evolves with you. As you grow, your community grows too, introducing you to new opportunities and challenges. And the connections you make often extend beyond your creative work, becoming friendships that enrich your life in countless ways. Ultimately, finding your scene isn't just about what you gain, it's about what you give. When you show up for others, offer support, and share your insights, you're contributing to the collective growth of the group. And in doing so, you're building a legacy of generosity and collaboration that amplifies your own creative journey. So, whether you're joining an existing group or creating one from scratch, take that first step. Reach out, connect, and engage. Because creativity doesn't just happen in isolation, it happens in community. And when you find your scene, you'll find that the possibilities for growth, inspiration, and collaboration are truly limitless. Chapter 6. Share your work consistently. Habits for long-term success. Imagine planting a single seed in the soil. First, nothing seems to happen. Days go by, then weeks with no visible change. But beneath the surface, that seed is germinating, sending out roots that will eventually support a thriving plant. The act of sharing your work consistently is like tending to a garden. Each small effort may seem insignificant on its own, but over time, it creates a foundation for growth that can lead to extraordinary results. Consistency is a superpower in the creative world. It's not about grand gestures or viral moments. It's about showing up, day after day, and putting your work out into the world. Over time, those small, regular acts build momentum, create trust with your audience, and amplify your reach in ways you might not expect. Take the example of Marcus, a writer who started a blog with the modest goal of posting one short essay every week. In the early days, his readership was limited to a handful of friends and family members. But Marcus stuck with it, writing and sharing consistently, even when he felt uninspired or doubted the value of his words. Slowly but surely, his audience grew. His essays began to resonate with readers who shared them with others, creating a ripple effect. Years later, Marcus is now a best-selling author, and he credits his success to the discipline of consistent sharing. But why does consistency matter so much? The answer lies in what's often called the compound effect. Just like investing small amounts of money regularly can lead to significant financial growth over time, sharing your work consistently builds an ever-growing portfolio of visibility and credibility. Each post, video, or project you share adds to the collective story of who you are as a creator, making it easier for people to discover, connect with, and trust you. Of course, staying consistent isn't always easy. Creative blocks, self-doubt, and the demands of daily life can all interfere with your ability to show up regularly. But here's the good news. Consistency doesn't mean perfection. It's about developing habits that help you keep going, even when inspiration feels out of reach. One strategy for overcoming creative blocks is to lower the stakes. Instead of aiming for a masterpiece every time you share, focus on small, manageable goals. Think of it as laying bricks for a larger structure. Each brick doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be in place. Another approach is to create a system that supports your consistency. For instance, set aside dedicated time for your creative work and sharing, whether it's an hour every morning, a few evenings a week, or a recurring time slot on weekends. Treat it like an appointment you can't miss, because the truth is, consistency thrives on routine. And don't underestimate the power of planning ahead. When inspiration strikes, create a backlog of content that you can draw from during slower periods. This safety net can help you maintain your sharing habit, even when life gets busy or creativity feels elusive. There's also immense value in embracing the idea of good enough. Perfectionism can be one of the biggest barriers to consistency, convincing you that your work isn't ready to be shared. But in reality, your audience doesn't expect perfection. They value authenticity, effort, and growth. Sharing imperfect work not only helps you stay consistent, but also allows others to see your evolution, making your journey even more relatable. Now, let's talk about the payoff of consistency. History is full of examples of creators who achieved breakthroughs simply because they kept showing up. Think about the story of Emily, a photographer who started a daily photo challenge on Instagram. Each day, she posted a single image, accompanied by a brief caption about her creative process. At first, her audience was small, but her commitment to consistency caught people's attention. Over time, her photos began to stand out in an increasingly crowded space, leading to features in major publications and collaborations with brands she'd once dreamed of working with. Emily's success wasn't about one viral post or a stroke of luck. It was the result of steady, deliberate effort over time. Her story is a powerful reminder that consistency is a long game. It's not about immediate results. It's about laying a foundation for the future. And here's the thing. Consistency doesn't just build your audience. It builds you. Every time you share your work, you're reinforcing your identity as a creator. You're developing your voice, sharpening your skills, and deepening your connection with your craft. Over time, this internal growth becomes just as valuable, if not more so, than the external recognition you gain. So, as you think about how to share your work consistently, remember that it's okay to start small. Whether it's a weekly blog post, a daily social media update, or a monthly project reveal, the key is to find a rhythm that works for you and stick with it. And when the road gets tough, remind yourself of the bigger picture. Each act of sharing is a step toward the future you're building. Consistency may not always feel exciting in the moment, but it's the quiet force that transforms dreams into reality. It's the steady hand that turns a single seed into a flourishing garden, a simple habit into a life-changing journey. And when you look back one day at all that you've accomplished, you'll see that every small act of sharing was a vital part of the story. Chapter 7. Handle criticism with grace. Thriving in a public sphere. Imagine unveiling your latest creation to the world. A piece of art, a project, or even a simple idea you've poured your heart into. You're excited, hopeful, and maybe a little nervous. But then, the feedback starts rolling in. Some people love it, while others, not so much. The sting of a harsh comment or dismissive remark can cut deeper than you expected, leaving you questioning your work and yourself. Welcome to the reality of sharing your work publicly. Criticism is inevitable. When you put yourself out there, you open the door to opinions, both good and bad. But here's the truth. How you handle criticism can make all the difference in your creative journey. Can either derail you or become a catalyst for growth. The first step in navigating criticism is learning to differentiate between constructive feedback and unhelpful negativity. Constructive feedback comes from a place of insight and intention. It aims to help you improve. Think of a teacher pointing out areas for growth or a peer suggesting tweaks to enhance your work. These voices, even when critical, are valuable because they push you to be better. On the other hand, unhelpful negativity is often rooted in ignorance, envy, or a desire to provoke. It might look like a cruel comment on social media or a dismissive remark that offers no real value. Learning to recognize this type of criticism is crucial, as it's the kind that can derail your confidence if you let it. Consider the story of Mia, a ceramic artist who decided to share her work online. Her first few posts received positive responses, but as her audience grew, so did the criticism. One comment called her designs amateurish, while another dismissed her craft as nothing special. First, Mia was devastated. She doubted her abilities and considered quitting altogether. But instead of retreating, she sought out the constructive voices amidst the noise. She reached out to a seasoned potter for feedback, who encouraged her to refine her glazing technique. She also joined a community of ceramic artists, where she found both encouragement and practical advice. Over time, Mia's work improved, and so did her confidence. Today, she looks back on those early criticisms as a turning point, not because they were right, but because they pushed her to grow. Building resilience in the face of criticism starts with developing a strong sense of self. When you're clear about your values, goals, and vision, you become less susceptible to the opinions of others. Think of it as building a solid foundation, one that can withstand the occasional storm without crumbling. A helpful strategy is to create a mental filter for feedback. When you receive criticism, ask yourself, does this person have expertise or experience in my field? Is their feedback specific and actionable? Does it align with my goals or vision? If the answer is yes, take it to heart. If not, let it go. Not every opinion deserves your attention, and learning to discern which ones do is a skill that will serve you well. Another powerful approach is to reframe criticism as a form of engagement. After all, people wouldn't take the time to comment if your work didn't provoke some kind of reaction. Even negative feedback can be a sign that you're making an impact. And sometimes, it's the critics who unintentionally highlight your strengths. Take the case of Alex, a filmmaker whose experimental short film received mixed reviews at a local festival. Some viewers didn't understand his abstract storytelling, while others called it too unconventional. But amidst the critiques, Alex realized something. His work was sparking conversation. It wasn't for everyone, and that was okay. By leaning into his unique style, Alex found a niche audience that appreciated his vision, leading to opportunities he never imagined. Humor can also be a powerful tool for handling criticism. When you encounter a particularly biting comment, try to find the humor in it. A lighthearted perspective can defuse negativity and remind you not to take everything so seriously. As one creator put it, if someone calls your work garbage, just remember, compost can grow beautiful things. Of course, some criticism hits harder than others, especially when it touches on insecurities or doubts you already have. In those moments, it's important to practice self-compassion. Remind yourself that no one is perfect, and every creator faces setbacks and criticism. Instead of dwelling on the negative, focus on the progress you've made and the steps you're taking to improve. Finally, don't be afraid to engage with your audience constructively. If someone offers thoughtful feedback, thank them and consider their suggestions. If a comment is hurtful or unwarranted, you can choose to ignore it or respond politely, setting boundaries as needed. In the end, criticism is a natural part of sharing your work. It's a sign that you're putting yourself out there, taking risks, and making an impact. And while it may not always be easy to hear, it's often the catalyst for growth, resilience, and deeper connection with your audience. So the next time you face criticism, remember Mia and Alex. Remember that the world's most successful creators all started somewhere, and faced their share of naysayers along the way. Most importantly, remember that your work has value, even if it's not universally praised. After all, art is subjective, creativity is personal, and the journey is yours to define. When you embrace criticism with grace, you're not just thriving in a public sphere, you're growing into the creator you're meant to be. Keep sharing, keep learning, and keep moving forward, because the best is yet to come. Chapter 8. The long game, staying relevant in a changing landscape. Picture this. It's a decade from now, and your creative work has blossomed into something you could only dream of. You're reaching more people than ever, engaging with a loyal audience, and staying ahead of the curve. But how do you ensure this success isn't fleeting? How do you remain relevant in a world that changes faster than ever? The key lies in adaptability. Creativity, like life, is an ever-evolving process. Platforms emerge and fade, audience tastes shift, and technology transforms the way we connect. For creators, this means that resting on your laurels isn't an option. To thrive in the long game, you need to stay curious, experiment with new ideas, and be willing to pivot when necessary. Think about the rise and fall of platforms like Vine. Many creators built massive followings there, only to see the platform shut down. Some floundered, unable to transition, while others adapted seamlessly, finding success on YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok. Their secret? They didn't see themselves as bound to a single platform. Instead, they focused on their broader mission, connecting with their audience and telling compelling stories, no matter the medium. Take Sarah, for example, a musician who gained traction on MySpace back in the day. When the platform declined, she didn't fade into obscurity. Instead, she leaned into the burgeoning world of Spotify and Instagram, sharing not just her music, but also the behind-the-scenes moments that made her human. She regularly asked her audience for input, inviting them to be part of her journey. Today, Sarah is thriving, not because she clung to a platform, but because she stayed adaptable and centered on building genuine connections. At the heart of this adaptability is investing in relationships. Your audience isn't just numbers on a screen, They're real people who resonate with your work. Building those connections requires time, effort, and authenticity. It's about responding to comments, engaging in meaningful conversations, and showing gratitude for their support. But it goes deeper than that. Investing in relationships also means collaborating with other creators, joining communities, and learning from others in your field. It's about recognizing that creativity isn't a solo endeavor. It thrives on connection and exchange. Imagine a photographer who starts by sharing their work on Instagram. Over time, they collaborate with a local designer, creating visuals for a fashion line. That collaboration leads to introductions to other creatives, sparking new projects and opportunities. The photographer's network grows, not because they focus solely on self-promotion, but because they invested in relationships that fostered mutual growth. As you look ahead, consider how the principles of Show Your Work can guide you in navigating the ever-changing landscape of creativity. At its core, the book is about more than sharing your work. It's about cultivating a mindset of generosity, curiosity, and resilience. Generosity means continuing to give value to your audience, whether through insights, inspiration, or entertainment. It's about sharing what you know, lifting others up, and creating a ripple effect of creativity and innovation. Curiosity keeps you moving forward, pushing you to explore new ideas, tools, and approaches. It's what drives you to experiment with different formats, try out emerging platforms, and embrace change as an opportunity rather than a threat. And resilience? That's your anchor. It's what helps you weather criticism, setbacks, and the inevitable challenges that come with a creative life. It's what reminds you that success isn't about overnight fame but about showing up, day after day, to do the work you believe in. As you play the long game, remember this: the landscape will continue to change, but the principles of creativity remain timeless. Stay true to your vision, keep sharing your journey, and trust that the seeds you plant today will grow into something extraordinary. Imagine looking back years from now and seeing how far you've come, not just in terms of achievements, but in the relationships you've built, the lives you've touched, and the growth you've experienced along the way. That's the true reward of staying relevant in a changing world. It's not just about keeping up. It's about staying connected to the essence of who you are as a creator and sharing that with the world, no matter what the future holds. So as you close this chapter, take a moment to reflect on your journey. What's the next step you'll take? How will you adapt, connect, and grow? And most importantly, how will you continue to show your work? Not just today, but for years to come. Chapter 9. Your turn to show your work. Now it's your turn. You've spent this time learning how powerful it can be to share your work with the world, to let people in on your journey and build connections that can lead to opportunities you never imagined. You've seen how visibility, storytelling, and community can change the trajectory of your creative life. But here's the thing: none of this matters unless you take action. It's time to stop hiding your talents in the shadows. It's time to share what you've been working on, what you've been learning, and what you're passionate about. I know it can feel scary, uncertain, even risky, but here's the truth. If you don't start now, you might miss out on opportunities that could change everything. And not just for you, but for the people who need your work. Your art, your skills, your ideas, they matter. And there's a world out there waiting to see them. So how do you start? Simple: begin today. It doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, it probably won't be. And that's okay. The point isn't to have everything figured out from the get-go. The point is to share something, anything, and take that first step toward building your presence, your audience, and your community. Start by sharing small pieces of your journey. Whether it's a process shot on Instagram, a behind-the-scenes story on TikTok, or a blog post about what you're working on, just start. Your audience doesn't need perfection. They need authenticity. They need you. One creator who embraced this was Emma, a graphic designer who felt insecure about sharing her work. She wasn't sure if her designs were good enough, and she worried about what others might think. But then, she read Show Your Work and made the decision to share her process. She posted work-in-progress images on Instagram, documented her design choices in a simple blog, and even shared some of her challenges along the way. To her surprise, people responded. They appreciated her openness, her willingness to share the ups and downs. Within months, she had a loyal following of clients and fellow creatives who admired not only her work, but her transparency. One of those followers turned into a collaborator, and together, they launched a successful product line. Emma's willingness to share her journey, even when it wasn't perfect, opened doors she hadn't even known existed. The truth is, there's no right time to start sharing your work. Waiting for perfection, or the perfect moment, only keeps you stuck in limbo. You might be afraid of criticism or rejection or failure. But remember, those things are a natural part of the process. Everyone who has succeeded has faced them, and they didn't let those obstacles stop them. They kept going, kept sharing, and kept showing their work. Let's take a step back for a moment. In the beginning, we talked about the artist who was overlooked despite their talent, the one who struggled to get noticed. Maybe you saw yourself in that story. Maybe you wondered, what if my best work never reaches the people who need it? Or, what if no one cares? Now, after everything we've explored together, I hope you see the truth. Your work has value, and when you share it, you open doors to possibilities you can't even imagine yet. You build connections, spark conversations, and create opportunities that would have remained out of reach if you kept your work to yourself. Think about Kevin, a coder who had always been passionate about open source software but kept his projects private. He didn't think anyone would be interested, but one day he decided to share his work on GitHub. He posted about a new tool he had created, explained how it worked, and invited others to contribute. Slowly but surely, people started engaging with his project. Others offered improvements, and Kevin collaborated with developers from across the world. As the project grew, so did his visibility, and so did his professional opportunities. Eventually, a tech company reached out to Kevin, offering him a dream job based on his contributions to the open source community. Kevin's willingness to show his work didn't just connect him with an audience. It transformed his career. Your journey won't look like Kevin's or Emma's. It will be uniquely yours. But the principles they embraced, the principles from Show Your Work, can help guide you toward your own breakthroughs. It's about visibility, storytelling, generosity, and community. It's about giving yourself permission to be imperfect, to be vulnerable, and to take that leap into the unknown. Now that you've learned the tools and strategies to share your work, it's time to put them into practice. The world is waiting to see what you can create. The people who need your ideas, your art, your solutions, they're out there. And the best way to reach them is to keep showing up. You've heard the stories. You've seen the power of sharing your journey. Now it's time to make your own story. Start small, stay authentic, and keep going. Share your work, build your community, and watch how the opportunities unfold. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing you can do as a creator is to show up, be visible, and keep sharing your work. That's how you'll grow, how you'll connect, and how you'll unlock a future that's even brighter than you imagined. So go ahead. Your work matters. Let the world see it.